One sec. All right, we're going live.
Welcome to Meditating with John Vervaeke. I'm a cognitive psychologist and a cognitive scientist at the University of Toronto. I scientifically and academically study things like mindfulness and related phenomena like insight, mystical experience, transformative experience, higher states of consciousness, and the cultivation of wisdom. I've also been practicing Vipassana meditation, meta-contemplation, Tai Chi Chuan, and Qi Kung for over 29 years. And I've been teaching them professionally for close to 20 years. So welcome. This is an ongoing course. What that means is every Monday is a Dharma day in which I teach, and I explain an important principle that builds on previous principles, and we usually do it, and then we sit together, and then there's a Q&A. Tuesday through Friday, we meet, we sit, I sometimes do some review, and then there's a Q&A, usually a longer Q&A at the end of the sit sessions. If you're joining us for the first time, you're welcome to stay. But if you look in the notes for this video, you'll find links to the previous lessons and the previous sits divided up into playlists. So please go there if you wish to catch up on what you've missed so far. Just wanted to remind everybody that we don't meet anymore on Saturdays. Both Saturdays and Sundays, you need to continue practicing on your own. You might want to, think about reviewing some of the earlier lessons at a time, and perhaps coming up with some questions over the weekend from that review that you could direct to me when we come back together. So let's prepare to sit, please. Please make sure that your phone is turned off or put on Do Not Disturb. Your timer is set and ready to go, and that you've got a comfortable position. Make your final adjustments into your posture. And remember that we're all sitting together. We have our virtual Sangha, and let's remember that as we sit. Okay, we'll begin when I say begin. Begin. Slowly begin to come out of your practice, trying as best you can to integrate what you cultivated in your practice with your everyday consciousness and cognition. Coming out of your sit is part of the practice. So we have some time for a couple of questions here. One from Mark Lefebvre. It's good to see you again, Mark. Is there an alternative set of familiar questions for metta? These specific types of people are problematic for me. It's hard to know how to answer that question, Mark, without knowing a little bit more about in what way they're problematic. They're problematic because they're bringing up all kinds of sort of powerful emotions and associations. Working with maybe just one of those in metta until that starts to, on its own, dissipate a bit, and you can start to get back from being locked into a particular emotional frame with them might be what you want to pursue. If it's problematic for reasons perhaps of trauma or other things that I don't want to pry into, then you might want to just do metta. Try doing metta towards yourself initially, and then just try doing metta towards all beings. First, all people, and then perhaps all living beings. Maybe a reorientation to a more primordial stance would help. Again, it's hard to give you specific things because I'm not quite clear on how these people are problematic to you. So those are two things. So both of my speculations might be incorrect, and I apologize if that's the case. But if there's the deep emotional issue, then find one person and just do metta with them, stay with them, and realize that what you're trying to do as much as possible is let that pattern loosen a bit so you can start to unlock from the particular emotional situation. Remember, this is not you trying to become contrite or forgive. This is just trying to unlock a pattern that you might be locked into. If it's more that there's issues here, sort of perhaps around trauma or other things like that, and therefore it's not the right time to do this, and I get that. And like I said, maybe just towards all people and then towards all living beings. Start with yourself, then all people. So skip specific people for now, but still try to get that expansive openness and that trying to unlock the reciprocal moreness. Now from Philip, 86 MYT, this is the 100th question. So thank you, Philip. This is the 100th question already. We're already at 100 questions. It's amazing. Keep it up, guys. Keep up these great questions. Rooting is a new technique and becomes intensely distractive just at the back channel consistently. Why is there a location-specific trigger for the default mode network leading to storytelling? So for those of you who don't know, Philip is invoking a very prevalent theory, a good theory from neuroscience, that we have two kinds of attentional networks. We have a task-focused network, as I mentioned, which is what we use when we're trying to concentrate on a task. And then we have the default mode network when we look inside, and that tends to get us into mental time travel and mind wandering. And what we're trying to do actually in meditation is co-activate them, because they're usually one is on and shutting the other off, because that co-activation is actually the most conducive for transformative insight. So it sounds like for Philip, when he's doing the back route, he's getting triggered. So there's a practical question here. I recommend that if that's the case, Philip, see if you can go just maybe just do the center route. Just instead of doing front and then center and then leaving the back, just do the center with a sense that it's sort of reaching gently into the front and the back, and just go through the center route. Why particular areas trigger the default mode network? I don't know. I mean, I don't think that what you're finding generalizes. It might be idiosyncratic to you. That's not saying anything prejudicial against you, by the way. Michael Washburn talks about the idea of body armor, that there's certain areas in our body that we lock down and try to control the sensation, the stimulation there, because they are associated with particular experiences that we don't want to remember or recall, or particular emotional states or states of identity that we don't like to be in. And perhaps that's what's going on. That could be one reason why specific areas of the body trigger the default mode network. because they sort of trigger that machinery of who am I, what am I, and sort of playing around with it. So that's again, I don't know. That's please take that for what it is. It's a speculation based on what I do know about ideas about body armor and the functionality of the default mode network. McCready, any tips for centering your attitude on days when you're frustrated, stressed, or anxious? Yes. So the order I gave you is that's not just happenstance. That's an effective order. So spend a lot of time centering the body. Like do it really deeply, really slowly, really extend it out, really center the body. Then spend a lot of time, and don't worry about centering your attitude. Just really centering your attention, and then really, really. You know how I had you savor your postural center? When you centered your attention as much as you can, right? Really savor what's it like to be centered in my attention and my body. And then try to carry that into centering your attitude. So you're neither fighting nor feeding. So that progression is actually progressive. It is to help you get the centering of the thing that's actually the most difficult to center in many ways, which is your attitude. Andre Ferrier, since I'm only focusing on following the breath, labeling distractions, and trying to get familiar with how that feels, I've noticed something I would only describe as dopamine rushes. Is that okay? Yes, it's okay. You'll get dopamine rushes. If I understand what you mean by that, you'll get those sort of bursts of dopamine. Is not the joy juice that the popular culture says. Dopamine has to do with salience and marking things as standing out, important for learning, and arousing you for that learning. And so if you're getting that sort of, right, again, that's because parts of the brain are talking to each other. And what's happening is a realization that there's an opportunity for learning here. There's an opportunity for transformation. There's an opportunity to inhabit and learn about, in a very participatory manner, parts of your mind and parts of your brain. Don't get caught up in it, and definitely don't start framing it as something you're seeking as the goal of your practice. Dennis Mantis, is there a version of meditation that would be appropriate for children? So there's a book, Meditating with Children. I'm very cautious about this because we don't know, we don't have good research about the relationship between meditation and small children. Like children before the age of formal operations, like children younger than, let's say, 11 or 12. So I'm hesitant about this. Getting them to do the soft vigilance practice on things, getting them to simply count their breaths and a little bit and stabilize, that's an appropriate thing to do. You can check out the book Meditating for Children. It has some good recommendations. You also want a much shorter term of practice, but please remember, don't push it very hard and don't try and get into the depths of the practice, because we're very unclear from a scientific perspective about how meditation and mindfulness, we know they have important changes on the plasticity of the brain. It literally changes the wiring of the brain. And so the way that interacts with the course of early development, we don't know. So I would suggest keeping it very, very simple. Soft vigilance exercises with the kids, counting their breaths, keeping it short, just something basic like that. Mark again, when rooting we have flow, then we have flow at the next level. Are these actually the same, or is there a better term during rooting? They're pretty much the same. The letting it flow is within the rooting practice is designed to get you into that state where you're starting to track the expansiveness of your experience. And then you're refining it when you're actually finding your flow, because you're not only doing the expanse, you're doing the enhancement of all of the differences and putting them into that sort of, that challenging, dynamic opponent processing. All right. So everyone, thank you for joining. As always, I want to thank my techno mage, Amar, my beloved son, Jason. Please subscribe to the channel to be notified of the next video. And on my channel, You'll also find lots of videos about, meditation, contemplation, mindfulness, insight, flow, mystical experience, transformative experience, higher states of consciousness, discussions about wisdom, enlightenment. So to set this in a broader practice, which is ultimately what you want to do, because if you remember the Buddhist tradition, right meditation, right concentration, right meditation, right concentration are only set within a whole comprehensive, a life comprehensive, dynamical system of practices. And so learning how to situate this into a broader philosophical way of life, where philosophy doesn't mean an academic thing, it means the cultivation of wisdom and virtue, is something you should ultimately be considering. Please invite others who might benefit by sharing this series. Help me to help as many people as I can through this series by sharing it as widely as you possibly can. We're doing this every weekdays. Mondays are Dharma days. Tuesdays to Fridays are sit days. We do it every weekday, 9:30 EST. See you on Monday for the next lesson. Take care, everybody. And remember that continuity of practice is more important than quantity of practice.